Hello everybody, and thank you for joining us for today's Draytech webinar. I'm Alex Shuka, Head of Product at Draytech UK, and with me today is Łukasz Walagoski, one of our product specialists in the team. Łukasz is closely involved in new firmware and feature development, and that's why he's the perfect presenter for today's topic, web content filtering. We're introducing the new URL reputation web content filtering service. Web content filtering in some form has been a feature in Draytech products for something like 20 years. It's evolved over time from very basic kind of file extension-based matching. We used to be able to block content for download based on the file extension, for example, blocking .exe files. It's something in theory you can still do, but changes to how the internet's consumed with move to encryption and using HTTPS and other protocols that offer end-to-end encryption make this much more limited. So the feature has become more sophisticated and evolved as the landscape and threats have changed. And the services on the internet have also developed. And today we're giving you an update on the latest version of our web content filtering, which introduced the concept of reputation-based categorization on top of the content-based categorization. And now if I just give you an intro to the session for today, this is intended for our reseller, Draytech Authorized dealers and advanced end users. After the session, we'll also be recording, well, a copy of the recorded video will be posted on the Draytech Code UK site. It should be either later this week or very early next week. So if you do get interrupted or have any colleagues or friends who you'd like to show the video, you'll be able to find it on the Draytech website in the video section, but also send a follow-up email to everyone so that they get a copy of it. The presentation is around the Draytech web content filtering IP URL reputation. URL reputation, and this webinar is being recorded, as I mentioned. You can ask any questions during the webinar and also ask questions at the end. To ask questions during, just use the chat function, send your question in during the session, and we've got people who will be able to answer you directly, but also we'll be taking some of the most popular questions and using those to feed into our Q&A session that we'll have at the end, where we'll have a live Q&A at the end where we'll answer some of the more popular questions.
Hello and welcome to the web content filtering webinar. We're gonna cover the web content filtering service, the license types and compatibility. We will talk about the activation process, configuration and troubleshooting. There'll be a scenario discussed, so that will make you more familiar with some additional features Draytech routers come with. And then we'll cover the availability, and as Alex mentioned, we'll summarize it with a Q&A session at the end. So let's start with the web content filtering. What is it and how important it is for your network? Draytech routers can monitor your traffic, so with web content filtering, they can allow or block specific content. So we can set up category-based web content protection, reputation-based protection, and many more. And I will focus on the web content filtering feature. There are 9 security-focused categories and dozens of other category groups that can be defined for the whole network or just for a single computer. So you just need one license to cover the whole network or specified devices. You don't need multiple licenses for every single device on your network. There's a 0-hour protection, so it's the service that gets updated almost immediately as well. Why do we need web content filtering? First of all, we can stop unwanted traffic. We can allow only trusted content on the internet and unblock unsuitable and inappropriate material. For example, schools can specify categories that are allowed or blocked, such as adult material that is unsuitable for children. Restricting access to social media may have impact on efficiency of some employees. and it is recommended to block dangerous malware or virus-ridden websites. Don't let your critical data leak to the internet. We can block outbound traffic and define which computer, group of computers or users, or even subnets, or the whole network is restricted. Moreover, this can be scheduled thanks to the flexible options available on JTAG firewall routers. For example, we can make access to Facebook during lunchtime and block it during working hours. So how does it work? When a user is trying to open a website, the HTTP or HTTPS encrypted request is sent from the computer. With web content filtering enabled, router will send the request to the service provider database first. Once the category of the website is confirmed, firewall will reject or allow the content of the website to be sent to the user. The new URL reputation service that will be available on JTAG routers can categorize websites. Here I have selected bbc.co.uk. Its category is news and media. There's also a second characteristic that can be taken into the account, the reputation. It is based on the infections detected in the last 12 months, popularity, and how old is the domain. The older, the better. New firmware will allow you to use that functionality. Is it easy to deploy JTAG's web content filtering? Just a matter of some mouse clicks. Simple as that. I will cover the setup and configuration and selection of the categories later on in this webinar. Now let's have a look at the types of the web content filtering licenses and the compatibility. There are still 3 types of the web content filtering licenses. Group A includes the 28 series routers, such as the 2865 and 2866 models. Group B is for small business and home networks, where 2135AX and 27 series routers are used. The URL reputation compatible firmware will be 443 or later. Group S routers will need the 4325 or later firmware. When ordering the new license type, please pay attention to different product codes. The URL R-A is used for Group A, for example. Note that the new license key is currently compatible with the previous web content filtering on all the firmwares, so that your network stays protected during the transition period. If you are not on the required firmware, then just activate Siron, and then once the firmware is available for your router, the license will transition to the new URL reputation service. After upgrade, and your license will continue to work. So now I would like you to have a look how to activate the web content filtering. We're gonna go through some steps. First of all, this is the myVigo account, which is optional for people who have already registered with them. Then we will add the JTAG router to myVigo and then activate the license. And finally, we will configure the router, and I will cover some troubleshooting steps as well. Okay, so let's begin. First of all, we need to go to myvigo.jtag.com website, where we can create a new account. Just hit that button there. Obviously, we need to agree with the terms and conditions. And here we just have the username, password, etc. I would like to, you would have to use the correct valid email address so that the confirmation can be sent during the registration process. Okay, let's add the router to my Vargo account. For most of the users, it's 192.168.1.1. Then we access the router. And now we just open the CSM section. And here, from Web Content Filter Profile section, we will see the screen where the Activate button on the right-hand side is available. Just hit that button, and the new page should appear. It is important that we use the DRATEC interface, routers interface, to access this page. That will allow my Vargo system to detect the router. There will be a special unique URL that you can see at the top with the MAC address of the device and some random characters that allow the system to create a new session. So what we need to do right now is just enter the my Vargo login credentials that were set up previously. If your router wasn't registered previously, I would expect you to see this screen where you can just enter the name and just hit the submit button. Once the router is linked with your My Vargo account, you can activate the web content filtering protection and other services. If your router is running a compatible firmware version with the new web content filtering provider, activate the recommended URL reputation section. Again, there will be some terms and conditions to accept. And then you can select the date and then press the next button. This is the final confirmation page. If you are happy with the settings, press the activate button. And here is the summary of the notification. Your router should now work with one of the selected web content filtering providers. If you want to check your subscription status, just go to CSM web content filter profile. If the web content filter service is active, the status will display Siren or URL reputation. The start date and expire date of the filter license are also shown. And here are the steps if you don't want to activate the trial because it has been used, or you just want to add the full 12 months license. So the steps actually are very similar, if not the same. We just go again to the My Vargo section and hit the renew license. And then instead of the trial, you have the option to enter the license key and then press next and activate the new license. It will kick in once the trial is ended, so you don't lose any day from the trial if you have the full license available as well to be added to the router. So now we are going to present the configuration steps of the web content filtering URL reputation. So we would have to log into the router and then navigate again to the CSM web content filter profile page. Then select one of the profiles to define the web content filtering categories. For URL reputation categories, make sure that the latest compatible firmware is installed on your router. Then the new categories can be selected, including 9 security focus options. The URL reputation provides dynamic real-time threat update protection that can send updates every 5 minutes. And here is the screenshot of the new category page. Just notice that I will use the categories selected here, and we do include section for the group of categories that are under the parental control. That includes alcohol, which I will discuss in troubleshooting section. Once we've got the web content filter profile configured, we just need to set up the DNS. So in this step, we need to go to CSM DNS filter profile page. Then we just open one of the profiles. So now we can just give it a name and select the previously configured web content filter profile. Sorry. Apologies. Right. now that both CMS and web content filtering and DNS profiles are configured, we need to add them to the firewall to block unwanted content. Navigate to Firewall, Filter Setup, and open one of the sets. Then click on one of the available rules. Filter Set 1, Rule 2 is used for this guide. The firewall rule page is now open. So we just enable the rule, give it a name, for example, web content filtering, and we add the web content filter and the DNS filter. And for monitoring and troubleshooting purposes, just select the syslog options too. If you want to check that the router is detecting specified categories or for troubleshooting purposes, enable syslog. Logs should include the source IP and destination address, web content filtering category, service provider, and the action. You can also use USB syslog option, or you can even send the logs to your syslog server. And here is the result of us trying to access the encrypted page, HTTPS, in this case, Gordon's gin, that was blocked. This is a message that my browser, Firefox, has generated because it wasn't happy with the content that the router was providing. For unencrypted traffic, router is able to display a different message rather than the web content. So here is the message saying that the traffic from specific computer, in this case 1.14, to the hendrixgene.com was blocked. For troubleshooting and diagnostics purposes, you can use the interface of your router or the logs collected by your server. We open here the Diagnostics Syslog Explorer page. And we can see one of the entries there that matter for our presentation is the web content filtering that was blocked. the action is blocked. The provider here is the URL reputation. We also got the category and the rule even that is specified. More details are also provided, so the IP address of the device that was requested in the page and the page itself and some extra details. So all that can be logged, and you can then report back to whoever needs to know the details. We are still working on the feature with new extra options being planned. So that will provide you with additional tools to help with web content filtering activities. This isn't available in the first URL filter firmware we are releasing, but will be included in the future. In the diagnostics section, you will find the Security Center page that provides summary statistics, even details, and feature-specific tools. Here we can see the URL reputation category checker. Just type in the URL to see the product category and the reputation level of specified website. Now I would like to cover some setup scenarios so we kind of get familiar with the extra options that we can combine with the web content filtering that many people find it in home, office, or any other environments. I'm gonna cover the home environment, which is still quite simple to set up, and you can add more options as you will. Obviously, our tech support team will be happy to help you with very advanced setups, but I think they're quite easy to configure anyway. So in here, we are going to lock the device that our kids use so that the same IP address will be allocated. This will help us to apply the firewall rule and web content filtering profile. On top of that, we will use the schedules feature so that very restricted access to the internet will be available. First of all, we need to lock kids' device or devices so that they always obtain the same IP address on our network. Navigate to LAN, bind IP to MAC, and select the device from the list. I've picked the 192.168.11.17 device. Enter the command so that your IP bind list is easy to read. Then open the object settings section and create a new IP object. Enter the object name and the IP address of the device. You may need to repeat this process for all the devices. So for example, you can create 2 or 10 IP objects and then add them to the group object. Next, we must create a new schedule. So I've opened one of the profiles on the application schedule page. Make sure that the new profile is enabled and give it a name, and specify the time when your firewall filter rules should start and last for. Here we have selected 9 o'clock in the evening, and the profile will last 10 hours, so until 7 o'clock in the morning. Okay, so it's time to add our new settings into the existing web content filtering firewall rule. Navigate to Firewall Filter Setup page and open the profile that was previously configured. Then click on the Edit button to add your IP object. Then select the schedule profile from the drop-down list. And here it is. The firewall is now updated. It will be triggered from 9 p.m. applied to our selected devices and filter unwanted content and report any activities. So far, we have covered the types of the licenses, compatibility, activation process. Then we have configured our router, applied additional settings for the home environment. We also learned how to troubleshoot and collect logs. Now, Alex will take over so that he can briefly talk about new features and our next webinar topic. And finally, we will have the Q&A session where you can ask any question. Thank you.
Thank you, Łukasz. So as Łukasz covered, he's given you a good overview of everything. I just wanted to talk about the different license types and supported models and touch briefly on some of the other models. So we've got the 3 different license types: Group A, which is the URL RA, and Group B, and then Group S. The service itself is the same for all of the different services. The only differences is the different routers may have different individual functionality in what you can do and enable, but when it comes to the subscription, what you're getting for that is the ability for the router to activate and send queries to the central database, to the central server. The licenses are slightly different in price. The pricing you can get from resellers, roughly the URLA is around kind of 66 is the SRP, URLB is around 30, and URLS is around 134, but there'll be kind of discounts and things available, and resellers have various discounts, so the actual price may vary quite a bit from that, but that's what the rough suggested prices are. The firmware versions we've got here are the versions of these models. So they're the first set of units that we're going to be releasing firmware for, and we're trying to get this to come out as soon as possible. It's just going through the final stages of our QA, quality assurance, just to check everything's okay before we release it, which should hopefully be this month. And the other models are going to follow. We'll be publishing a list of which models will be getting the firmware and when that's likely to be available. If there's a unit that hasn't been updated, then you can still activate the license on. It would just use the existing service. So that's the Siren-based service. The Siren-based service is continuing. It's still functioning, and so you can still use that without updating the firmware. And if you do activate the service on a router, and the router is given a firmware updated to the new reputation-based service, then it will automatically translate the licenses, as Łukasz explained earlier. We go on to the next slide, please. I just wanted to briefly cover a bit of a preview of some of the next steps. We're going to be looking at developing the firmware further and giving additional things. One is insights. So in the web interface, there should hopefully be some dashboards that show the administrator what sort of activity there's been, what blocks there's been, and a general overview, which I think would be quite nice at seeing what's happened on it. And then also on the next slide, we have plans to add in an additional type of filter, which is called the IP reputation filter. So the URL reputation filter is the current license, but there's a separate one we're looking at doing called the IP reputation, which will allow reputation based on IP. So instead of it based on the URL, be based on the IP address. So this should allow an ability to be quite reactive to threats based on incoming IP addresses, or on outgoing connections to IP addresses that are known by our system to be malicious. It might be something that's always been known to be malicious, or it might be something that used to be legitimate but maybe has been compromised and is now being used as a kind of command and control or something for a bot network. Because we're reacting very quickly, it means that we can drop the reputation of that IP, and in the future the idea is that you'll be able to set things so that if the reputation is too low, the router would block the traffic to protect the network, which I think is quite a useful feature. And it's kind of, I mean, the IP-based stuff has been done for a while, where you kind of block countries. Perhaps if you're only operating in the UK and Europe, you might decide to block some countries in completely different regions because you don't want traffic from there. But this is a much more sophisticated way of doing it, especially now that it's a lot more global. But it allows you to do it based on reputation of IPs, and that means that things can be a lot more reactive and more sophisticated. So that's something to look for in the future, but we'll make more announcements and more detail of that once we've kind of continued some developments. That's something to look for later in the year. And next slide, please. Finally, I just wanted to mention some upcoming webinars. The next one is a review of FTTP, how that's developed. So this is our update on that for 2023. So that will be on the 22nd of June. There'll be invites. It's another webinar, so look out for that to sign up. And then after that, on the 4th of July, we have a webinar where we're doing a live Q&A, where we've got a Q&A session we've got in a moment, but we often find that there's lots and lots of questions that come in, and we don't necessarily have enough time to do everything in full. So we thought we would have a session where it's just for questions. So we're going to run a session there, which will just be a Q&A. We'll get a bunch of panelists on various topics, so they're able to answer lots of different questions. And we're going to invite anyone who's attended to, who's signed up to put in their questions beforehand, but also you can send in your questions through any method. You can send us tweets, send us emails, kind of on the social, and we'll compile those beforehand as well to help with some questions to get started. So we think that will be quite a good session. It's a new type of session for us, so we're quite excited to see how that goes, but that's something coming up next month. And next, if we can go to the Q&A. So thank you everyone for all of your questions. I think I've got Łukasz still here, hopefully.
Yes, I'm still with you.
Good, thanks, Łukasz. So yeah, we have had a bunch of questions during the session. Thank you very much, and please do continue to put in some questions now, because we'll be able to cover some of them. But if I just start with some of the more popular questions. First one, I think I might have covered, but I'll just reiterate anyway. When will firmware be available? Because is there anything you wanted to add on that, on timescales?
So yes, you are more than welcome to join our beta program to test the beta firmware, because we have some firmwares now available for the 2865 and 2866 and the 2927 routers. We're expecting more beta firmwares to be released soon. And the official firmwares are, at this point, there is no date or time given, I'm afraid, but we look closely to that, and we are trying to kind of change the engineers, but we'll see. Once it's ready, you guys are gonna be notified again as soon as possible. So I think there is also a firmware notification list that you can subscribe for. So please do, and then we will be able to send you the latest news about that.
Thanks, Łukasz. And if anyone's interested in getting a copy of the firmware, the beta firmware, just send a message in the chat here or in the follow-up survey, and we can contact you to give you a copy of it. It's available for some models now, so we'd be able to give you a copy of that. Included in it is the ability to activate a 30-day trial of the new service as well, for anyone, so you can activate the trial. But if there isn't firmware, as I mentioned, you can still activate the license now that we're selling that again, and it just activates the current service, and then as soon as we've launched firmware, it will be moving across to the new service. So next question is, where were we here? So the question came up about what 0 day means. So someone wants to know how does 0 day work in practice? Is there something they'd need to enable specifically to get benefits from the 0 day functionality, and what does that kind of mean when it comes to if there is a new threat?
Right. So the URL reputation service gets updates. So when a query is sent to the server, the server database is updated within days or even minutes. So it gives you better protection. So if there's like website that nobody noticed was filled with some viruses, etc., and then people access it, if that was reported to the service will update its database servers immediately, and then there's less likely that you're gonna have any harm from that.
Yeah, so you'd be protected by having, say, for example, category being phishing. A website that is just a normal innocent website that hasn't been used for phishing might previously have been categorized as news or something, and then if it's detected that that website is being used for some other purpose, the category gets updated to include phishing in addition to news, and then you'd automatically, when your router queries the category of that site, it gets that new information to know that it's now actually in this malicious category. Kind of how it works. So it's something you don't generally need to, if you configure it so that you're blocking a lot of those kind of malicious type categories, then you'll automatically benefit from the 0 day type functionality, because a site that previously you would have allowed because it was legitimate, if it's got compromised with some sort of malicious stuff on it, then it automatically would be then recategorized as something that's bad. And same with the reputation side of things would be you'll be able to set a reputation so that it, if it has a bad reputation, it gets blocked as well. And this question about managing many devices, I think possibly the answer might be ACS. So if you've got many devices and you want to manage the web content filtering on those, what's the best way of doing that? Because how would you do that?
Okay, so we had one of the scenarios where we specified we use the IP objects. So we can use that functionality to create a second web content filtering profile, because you have you can configure multiple profiles and multiple firewall rules. So it not only is restricted to a single rule, I haven't added that device that shouldn't really be part of, I don't know, schedule, but it should be blocked, shouldn't get any access to some other categories. You have, well, maybe not unlimited, but very flexible number of additional profiles we can use. So let's say group A devices won't have access to some to alcohol, for example. Group B devices won't have access to alcohol and, I don't know, news. Okay, and that can be configured within the router. So and then you can add or remove the object, etc. Not only that, if you have segmented your network and you have, let's say, 2 subnets or more, you can specify that this profile applies to subnet 1 and the second profile applies to subnet 2, or you can even, mix and match. So profile 1 will be activated during those hours, profile 2 during evenings, etc., and then add even more profiles to make more advanced settings. So flexibility with that is great. So I would really recommend you guys to use the protection on Vigo routers.
Thanks, Vikas. And another question is about encryption. So if the traffic's encrypted with HTTPS, how can the router take action? And there's a follow-up question to this, I think, after your answer.
Okay, so I actually did cover that briefly as well. This is the reason we use DNS filter, the additional profile we need to create. So when we specify the web content filtering profile, then we create a second profile in the DNS section, where that DNS profile includes the categories we have created before. And then that allows the router to basically check every single DNS query. And for the regular DNS queries that we still use these days, it will be able to stop the traffic.
And the follow-up question was actually a separate question, but kind of related, was if someone is using encrypted DNS, so there's DNS over kind of SSL, which things like DOH, what can you do about that? Because that would be encrypted DNS.
So that's DNS over HTTPS.
Yes. So the answer on that is that you could consider, I think in a corporate environment, we'd recommend you just consider blocking DOH to enforce the use of DNS. I think that's kind of the appropriate answer in a corporate environment. And there's ways of using the content filtering to block the kind of DOS. The DNS with SSL. So that's the approach we generally recommend to enforce that stuff is used on DNS. And question about MyVigor accounts. Should the MyVigor account be owned by the end user or the reseller? And does the MyVigor account and access to it affect the ability to configure the web content filtering? What do you need the MyVigor account for?
So the MyVigor account is basically the service that allows you to link the router with the services JTAG offers globally. So it would be better if the owner of the router registers their device. However, if you are providing some services to specific customers and you want to take care of the logins and stuff, and if at some point they want to change the provider, then obviously the transfer of the account is possible as well to a new email address and new users. So it's basically up to you guys which method you take. For home users, obviously, definitely please do register your router so that you have full control over what's happening. There are more features available on MyVigor system, like VPN matcher, DDNS. You can use JTAG DDNS, which is free. So I would really recommend you guys use that service.
Great, thank you, Vikas. And there's a question that I think I can answer to do with Siren. So as I think people may or may not be aware, Siren went into some financial difficulties. The services always continued to be running, but there was some, I think, doubt over whether it would continue. What's happened now is that Siren have been purchased by another provider, and they are continuing to run the Siren service and give it updates. So it's still kind of working as it stands now. I mean, whether or not that changes in the future, I don't know, but it stands currently that all the services are running, activated, and receiving regular updates, as I understand. So if you are on older firmware with Siren, you still benefit from that. We are planning on releasing firmware for some of the older models, but we haven't got confirmation of exactly which models are, because there's models that are like 3-4 years old, and there's models that are 20 years old. So we're just considering through that. But I think that a lot of the more recent ones, like something like the 2862, is going to receive a firmware reasonably quickly. But the dates, there's us doing the firmware, but also there's a date of when that firmware will be launched. So we're kind of working through looking at the backlog of those. So we will be, but we'll try and kind of share some more information as we've got a clearer picture about when the which models will get support and when that's likely to be. Question here about false positives. What happens if the category is wrong? Is a question. If someone maybe running a site and they look at the categorization and find that it's not quite the right category, what should they do, and how does that get corrected by the service?
Right, that's a very good question. So each category can be edited, obviously, but not by us, but by the service provider. That would have to be reported to them, and then they will look into that. If they are happy with the new category or the change that shouldn't happen, then they will revoke that, and we should have the website accessible again. At the moment, I would advise you to contact the support team if you have such a case. But in the future, I would expect some tools to be available for you to report it directly.
Okay, thank you. And there's a question about device changes. So if someone has a service activated on a device and then they replace it with a new device, can the license be transferred from the old device to the new device?
That depends. In general, new devices do come with a free 30 days license. So if the previous license is less than 30 days, I'll probably just activate the trial.
But yeah, the licenses aren't generally transferable. There are possibly some exceptions for this. So it's if there is, for example, a unit that has kind of gone faulty, and the licenses, the reason for the new device is because of that, then it's likely support will be able to help with transfer. Also, the service center, if it's something under warranty, would normally handle that migration anyway, but the licenses themselves are not as standard transferable. But if there's specific exceptions, then do just contact our support, and we can look at it on a kind of case by case basis. And another question here is about if someone uses a third-party DNS. So if someone's not using the router for DNS, does that mean they can bypass the web content filtering of the service?
Well, not really, because router is still detecting the DNS requests, and it should be able to filter that traffic for you. So it's unlikely you can have a workaround like that.
So the key thing there is about whether or not the router is acting as the gateway. So if it's the gateway, then it can control it. If it's not, if someone's got a different gateway, so if they've got an alternative route out to the internet that doesn't go via the router, then it won't. If there's some other internet access that means it's not actually touching the routers, then yeah. But otherwise, yeah, because says it's going to be able to block it. Right. I think it's kind of looking at the time. I think we can probably wrap it up there. I can see there's quite a few questions. We're going to try and get back to people directly. So you should receive an email from us directly if you've got a kind of an unanswered question. We'll be contacting you. But I just wanted to thank you all very much for attending. And there's a survey at the end when you close, or you will alternatively get an email. Please complete that. Give us some feedback so that we can look at that for future webinars, and do look out for the new dates of the webinars we've got scheduled this month and next month. And just wanted to thank you very much for attending, and look out for more news, because I think we're going to be doing more things on the web content filtering. There's a lot of functionality we've only just touched on today, and there's other things about how you can manage multiple devices using ACS that I think we're going to be looking at in the future as well, which I think should be interesting for people who are managing large estates. So thanks very much, Lucas, and thank you everyone for attending.
Thank you, guys. Have a good day.